The film starts with a young Japanese man named Kwon sitting on the street, drawing a beautiful girl. At that moment, another painter named Leichi appears who is driving a very expensive car with his girlfriend Marcha. Marcha was Kwon's old girlfriend, but she left him and married Leichi because he's the most famous and richest painter in the country. Leichi buys paintings from Kwon and sells them in exhibitions, pretending he's the one who drew them. Then he gives Kwon only 5% of the money, while he of course pockets the rest. Kwon goes to get into his car, but he finds it broken down and the money he has isn't enough to fix it. After a while, Kwon returns to his house in the artist district. There, the landlord asks him about the rent, so Kwon pays for the current month, but the landlord tells him he has to pay for the new month tomorrow. Kwon gets angry and wants to hit him, but then he goes to an art gallery in the city because the annual exhibition is coming up and Kwon wants to display his paintings. Kwon has to pay all the money he has to the gallery owner, hoping he'll put his paintings in the exhibition, but he refuses and makes fun of Kwon, telling him no one likes his paintings except Xiao, who works in a barber shop because she's blind and can't see. Kwon gets very upset and feels embarrassed because he sees himself as a genius painter. But Leichi's paintings sell much faster because he's famous and everyone loves him, even if he didn't even paint them. Kwon then goes to the barber shop and there he sees Xiao trying to cut customers' hair even though she can't see. At that moment, the customer argues with her, so Kwon tries to defend her and hits them. But he is very weak, so they hit him instead. At night, he's sitting with Xiao at home. His whole body is bruised from the beating and his face shows sign of blood and swelling. He gives Xiao a gift, which is a new pair of shoes, and she's very happy because he cares about her even though she can't see him. It seems they both really like each other. Kwon's friend Mang is with them, so Xiao leaves the house so they can be alone. At night, Kwon and his friends sit on the rooftop until suddenly Mang falls asleep. Kwon keeps looking at the sky until he sees a spaceship passing over him. He pretends to be asleep and watches the ship stop. 3 aliens get out of it onto another painter's rooftop. Kwon quickly hides and keeps watching them, trying to photograph them, but they sense him, so they return to the ship and escape quickly. Kwon notices that a magical tool fell from them onto the ground, so he goes to pick it up before anyone else sees it. The next day, Kwon tells Mang everything. Mang makes fun of him because everything he's saying is the same picture hanging next to Kwon's bed. Kwon then goes to start his work as a street artist. At this moment, he decides to use the tool that fell from the aliens yesterday. He draws a circle on a paper to test the tool's line, and suddenly, his drawing turns into a real stone. So he draws an apple and it actually turns into a realistic apple. He's completely shocked and can't believe it. He rushes back home and tells Mang everything, but Mang of course doesn't believe him, so Kwon proves to him that he's not lying. He draws a gold bar on the paper, but the gold bar doesn't appear in reality. Mang makes fun of him and throws the paper out of the window. Suddenly, that paper turns into a real gold bar and falls on the landlord's head. At that moment, the landlord argues with Kwon until he discovers that what fell on his head is the gold bar. So he leaves Kwon alone and takes the gold bar in exchange for the wound on his head. After that, Kwon starts thinking with Mang about how they can benefit from this amazing tool. They draw another gold bar and it actually appears in the real world. Kwon draws a beautiful house and suddenly this house appears on the street. All the city residents get scared and then they call the police. Police detectives arrive and enter the house to see who is inside. Kwon is standing in front of the house monitoring everything and he's afraid the police will arrest him. So he decides to erase the drawing. He realizes at that moment that the other side of the pen works as an eraser and he actually erases the drawings so the house disappears from existence. Kwon and his friend return home and there he decides to draw a new painting, but this time he'll draw money to buy a new house because every time he draws a house, the police will surely arrest him. He writes 20 million on a piece of paper hoping the money will appear for him, but he's shocked that the numbers turned into actual numbers in real world. So he draws the shape of money and writes the amount and indeed the money starts filling the house strangely. Kwon changes their hairstyles and clothes and they buy new cars. They go the next day to look at the new houses so they can move from Kwon's current place. There they meet Leichi, who is also trying to buy a new house. Leichi keeps making fun of Kwon because he's a failure and poor. He won't be able to buy one house. Kwon gets angry and decides to buy 2 houses, especially after Mang encourages him to do so. Leichi is shocked when he sees that Kwon has all this money and doesn't know how he got it because Lee himself can't afford to buy the house Kwon bought. The next day, Kwon decides to use his money to get married. He throws a huge party and invites many people. At that moment, Xiao enters the party and Kwon approaches her and tells her that he loves her and wants to marry her, but she shocks him and tells him she doesn't agree to marry him, and she actually leaves the party to go. Kwon runs after her, and outside the building, Kwon asks her why she did that. She tells him she did it for him because she doesn't want to embarrass him, as he's been able to sell many paintings and is now a rich person, so he can marry any girl he loves. As for her, unfortunately, she can't see and won't be able to help him with anything. Kwon gets upset and tells her he loves her, and he tells her that he didn't sell any paintings or anything. He starts telling her about the magical tool that fell from the aliens and says he used this tool as a pen to draw anything he wanted and turn it into reality. Of course, Xiao is very impressed, but she still doesn't believe him, so he decides to prove her that the pen is really magic. While they are talking, the same spaceship passes over them, but he doesn't notice it because he's focused on Xiao. They return home after the party is over, and Mang comes to sit with them. Kwon brings one of his paintings and draw eyes, and these eyes appears on Mang's shoulders. Of course, they are all scared when they see these eyes, so Kwon erases the eyes again and starts thinking about a plan to give Xiao her eyes back. He decides he will draw her entirely, and he keeps drawing her until morning comes. After he finishes the drawing, Xiao discovers that nothing has changed, so she decides to leave, but as she is leaving, she suddenly disappears. Xiao emerges from the painting with eyes and can see now. Of course, they are all shocked and can't believe it, and Xiao is very happy that she can finally see again. Kwon takes her to see the city because she has never seen it before. It appears that Mang also dated a beautiful girl he had liked for a long time. After a while, Kwon holds an auction to sell his paintings. At that moment, a news report appears on TV about very strange incidents happening in the country. The first incident is the disappearance of an actress's eyes in Hollywood. The second incident is the disappearance of 20 million from a bank in China. And the last incident is the disappearance of a car while its owner was driving it with his girlfriend. The press goes out to the street to investigate all these cases, and one of the journalists discovers that a house appeared and disappeared in an animal at the same moment. Now, a police detective reviews the surveillance cameras at the bank and notices that the money disappeared without anyone entering or even leaving the bank. At that moment, Lee calls the detective and tells him that a poor painter from an area named Kwon suddenly has a lot of money. He is rich and famous now, so the detective decides to monitor him because he's suspicious of him, and he actually discovers that the money Kwon is spending is the same money that was stolen from the bank. So he decides to arrest him to interrogate him. It appears that the police detective is sitting at the auction monitoring everything that's happening. Suddenly, he and his friend stand up and ask Mang and Kwon to come with them to interrogate them. They actually go with them to a room in the villa, and there the detective asks them about the bank robbery and the money they have. They tell him they didn't steal anything, and of course they're very scared. At that moment, Mang decides to use his mind for the first time. He explains to the detective that he has a magical power that can turn any drawing into reality. He tells the detective that he wants a car, so Kwon draws the car and suddenly it turns into a real car in front of him. The detective is very impressed and believes that Kwon has magical power, and he actually lets him go to continue his auction. Kwon returns home to the press, reassuring them. After a while, the auction ends and they all return to Kwon's house. There they sit and talk, and they are very scared because they were about to go to prison. Kwon begins to understand that this pen isn't magical at all, but its mission is to transfer things from one place to another. He gets very agitated because he doesn't want to harm anyone, and at the same time he doesn't want to appear as a thief and then go to prison. At that moment, the police detective sees on the news that there is a report about a car disappearing under mysterious circumstances, and it's the same car he has. So the detective goes with his friend and monitors Kwon's house until he gets an order to arrest him on suspicion of theft. Kwon notices that a police car is in front of his house, so he gets very agitated and is scared because he doesn't want to go to the prison. After a while, Macha, Kwon's old girlfriend, arrives, and there are signs of beating on her face. She enters the house to talk to Kwon and apologizes to him very much for abandoning him back then and marrying Leichi. Kwon forgives her when he learns that Leichi hit her because he was jealous of him. He tells her that he used to be obsessed with painting only and wasn't interested in her besides not having money, and she needed money to pay her father's hospital expenses. That's why he forgives her, because if he were in her place, he would definitely have abandoned her. They both keep drinking until they get drunk, and Kwon decides to tell her everything about the magic pen. At that moment, Lei Chi is in his house, monitoring Kwon from the surveillance camera attached to Macha's clothes. It turns out that all this was his plan to find out the truth, and he's shocked, of course, when he learns the story of the magic pen. At that moment, Shao is watching TV and sees the news about the actress who lost her eyes, so she feels guilty because she's the reason the actress lost her eyes. The next day, the police detective goes to Kwon to take the magic pen from him, especially after he saw the news that the car was stolen. It appears that the detective doesn't believe what's happening. It's like he's in a science fiction movie. Of course, Kwon is very scared at that moment because he might go to prison. The detective reassures him that he won't imprison him because he hasn't committed any crime, and all he needs to do is hand over the pen to police, and then he'll be innocent and no one will bother him. At that moment, Kwon agrees and opens the safe, but he's shocked that the pen isn't in the safe. A few hours ago, Kwon was sleeping on the floor drunk, so Lei Chi entered the house without anyone seeing him and stole the magic pen from the safe. After that, he kidnapped Macha and escaped from the house. Even though the detectives saw him leaving the house, he lied to them and told them he was getting his wife from the house. Lei Chi appears on the plane with his assistants, and Macha is tied up so she can't escape from him. Lei Chi begins to think about things he wants to draw, so he decides to draw an art exhibition, and indeed the exhibition appears in the middle of the city. Lei Chi arrives at the exhibition and is very impressed by its beauty. After that, he decides to build a legendary palace and declare himself emperor of all China. So he draws the palace and it appears in real world. After that, he imagines marrying the most beautiful girl in the world. He has a magazine with a picture of the Chinese beauty queen whose name is Alice. He decides to draw her so she will appear in front of him and he can marry her. Alice is in a beauty pageant at that moment, and the host announces that Alice has won, so the staff member goes to put crown on her, but suddenly Alice disappears from the pageant and appears in front of Lei Chi's palace, shocked and thinking she's dreaming. Lei Chi tells her that he's one who brought her here to marry her. She gets angry and slaps him across the face, causing his nose to bleed. Suddenly, the police arrive at the station to take the magic pen, but Lei Chi refuses to give them the pen even if drawing means transferring something from one place to another. After a while, he decides to escape from planet Earth entirely, so he draws a spaceship to escape. Suddenly, the spaceship of the alien creatures from which the magic pen fell for the first time appears. Three very strange-looking green creatures with tails come out of the ship. One of them attacks Kwon, and it appears he's very angry and wants to choke him to finish him off. Kwon tries to explain him that he doesn't have the pen. The rest of the creatures attack the police detectives, so they drop all their weapons on the ground. At that moment, Kwon points to Lei Chi because he has the pen. They notice that Lei Chi isn't there, so he appears inside a war tank to finish them all off and take the pen for himself. Humans escape and run everywhere. The aliens go and attack the tank, so they pull Lei Chi and his assistants out of the tank, and Lei Chi gives them the magic pen and asks them to forgive him. The leader of the alien creatures gets angry as soon as he sees the pen and knows that the pen is broken, so he and his friend attacks Lei Chi and are about to finish him off, but Kwon intervenes and asks them to forgive Lei Chi. Kwon tells them the truth, and indeed the leader decides to forgive him because Kwon is brave and admitted his mistake. The alien leader begins to erase all the drawings and returns everything to its place. The magic drawings disappear and even Xiao's eyes. She goes back to not seeing again. In the end, the police takes Lei Chi with them for kidnapping Alice and also for hitting Macha.